don't mind, you just don't know what to do. You came spinning away at your own pace. No one could stay in your orbit. You were flying ahead in your own space.
Talk about beating a dead horse. I'm sure as many of you know, this topic has been widely discussed on the internet, and I'm sure you've all seen multiple videos about this topic on the internet. However, I feel like a lot of people have glossed over, in a sense, some parts that are very key to why this has happened and why these decisions were made in reference to these films, and why Disney in particular thought this was a good idea. Research time. So, Wikipedia describes the suspension of disbelief as critical thinking or logic in examining something unreal or impossible in reality, such as work of speculative fiction, in order to believe it for the sake of enjoyment. So, Aristotle was one of the first people to observe this within human culture. He was around during the time of the great Greek plays and myths, where the audience would have to believe not only in the religion of the gods, but also in the plays of these gods acting out and affecting the world around them. However, the first time it was coined by someone in the English language was by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, a philosopher in the 1800s. He first used it in 1817, describing it as the human interest in a semblance of truth, and was used in fantastical tales to help the reader relate and understand to the story. He pretty much described it to justify the unjustifiable. It's also known as poetic faith, and I find this very fitting. We are putting our faith into the media to be telling us a story that we find entertaining. So when writing a story or when filming a film or a TV series, relying on a fantastical element, whether that be Lord of the Rings or The Hunger Games or sci-fi, whatever, we need to have a suspension of disbelief. We need to know that while this might not happen in our world, it does happen in this world, and we need to be able to relate to that. And it's important in these films and media that the world building and writing support that, especially if they are realistic films, if they are not done with animation. And that is because it looks like our world pretty much, especially if the characters are human leads. They look like us, so we think the world would behave in the same way. So animation, when used for these films, actually works really well, because we automatically presume this isn't like our world because it is animated. While they have the semblances of like a human character or human designs, they are not directly human. So when these were first used within Disney especially, the genius Howard Ashman realised that animation would work best for a musical structure, for when a character's emotions get too much for talking, so they start singing, and when it's too much for singing, they start dancing. This went hand in hand within animation, and he kick-started the Disney Renaissance, starting with The Little Mermaid and then progressing forwards. And while he did work on Beauty and the Beast, he unfortunately died while production was still going through. And his impact has lasted for decades after the fact. I mean, the entire Disney Renaissance still worked with some of Ashman's previous works, especially in Aladdin, but all over the place within Disney after this time, he left an impact. And it's important to see that he was the reason why Disney came up from the ground, why Disney didn't end up dying, because it was dying before the Renaissance happened. And we owe a lot to him, to what we view as animated media today. He is really the forefront of why animation is so important. So why did Disney change it? So falling out of love with animation, I find, is the key component to why certain decisions were made within Disney to make these films. And these decisions obviously had very negative backlash now that we're looking back on it. And I personally believe that the aspect of falling out of love with animation is not just down to Disney. I find it's also down to the consumer, us as the consumer of this media. Because for so long, especially from, I'd say, early 2010s to about 2017, like just before we hit about 2019, the majority of animated media that we had was 3D animated media, which all looked very similar, very stylized in the way of the Pixar look, as it has been coined online and in other spaces. And there's nothing inherently wrong with this design, but as with anything which eventually gets overproduced and overconsumed, it eventually becomes boring to us as an audience, and therefore we don't like it as much. I'm not saying these films are bad by any means. Of course, you still have the great ones like Moana. I really liked that film when it came out, but they're just not as good as previous Disney works. And we've seen that a lot. And excluding certain films from Pixar, overall, the best Disney films to have come out since about 2009 would have been Frozen and Moana. I know loads of people don't like Frozen, but it's not a bad film. Like, yeah, some of the writing sucks, but it's still okay to watch. So when this became the norm, when Tangled was released and suddenly everybody wanted to look like that specific style, it got completely oversaturated. And I feel like us as an audience, we fell out of love with that, and Disney realised. But not only that, we also have to look that critically, and within critic spaces and within award spaces, especially the Oscars, animation is not taken seriously. It is taken as a kids' genre. Animation is not a genre, it is a medium. There is no way that you can compare two different pieces of completely different animated media, such as stop motion and 3D animation. There's so many nuances between the two of them, it's impossible to compare. Famously, Brad Bird, the director of The Incredibles, has gone on record stating that he does not believe that animation is a genre.
People think of animation only doing things where people are dancing around and doing a lot of histrionics, but animation is not a genre. And people keep saying, the animation genre. It's not a genre. A Western is a genre. Animation is an art form, and it can do any genre. You know, it could do a detective film, a cowboy film, a horror film, an R-rated film, or a kid's fairy tale. But it doesn't do one thing. And next time I hear, oh, what's it like working in the animation genre? I'm gonna punch that person.
And unfortunately, for the Oscars, animation is a genre award thing. Like, you are awarded it as a genre best animated film. And I don't think that's fair, because the overwhelming majority of animated films that come out are aimed towards children. And of course you have the occasional standouts from that, but I believe that animation is a lot more than that. But this isn't the key problem as to why the remakes were made and why the live action versions of them were now so popular for Disney. Disney wants to be an Oscar darling. Realism does really well in this, and they know that their films, when they came out in the Renaissance, did well. Not only that, the children who grew up watching the Renaissance films now have children of their own. That is a whole new audience to cater for, and instead of creating something new or unique, they've decided to just go back to having the original films that they created and just put a new filter on them, pretty much, and made them through. Some of them have minor changes. I think the biggest changes that we can find in most of them would be in Maleficent. It would also be in The Jungle Book, where they removed pretty much all of the songs from that. but in most of them they are beat by beat the same as the originals, with the occasional added song for a character who didn't have one previously. And this, I find, would be a great opportunity to try something new, but they didn't. They decided to just add bad and not well written songs to these characters, and they don't help the story along. But animation overall, I feel like, is not treated seriously. It's not treated as like a professional way to create something. And of course, this goes back from years and years of stigma and like opinions against animation as it just being, as I mentioned before, for children. But animation is very important to loads of different things. I mean, we now have more adult animated TV shows. My personal favourite to have come out recently is Arcane, as I'm sure it is the same for a lot of you. It's a beautifully animated piece and shows what animation can do for an adult audience. Hi there, Editor Me back. I forgot to mention that Arcane is actually one of the best examples of adaptation that we can see within film and TV. It's adapted from the game League of Legends, and it tells a beautiful story and is able to go into the depths of the society and the world created from that video game. Not only does it explore entirely new points than you would have found in the game, it's also able to tell a truly heartfelt story, and I think this is what we should be striving for within film and TV and general media. That's not just on us for Disney falling out of love with animation. Disney no longer wants to put as much, I don't really want to say effort, because they obviously had huge teams working behind these films, but it feels like there's less effort on it. They're trying to make it look as consumer friendly as possible and as aesthetically pleasing as possible, but in the cheapest and quickest way, which doesn't work well when the films that you are producing are just shit, actual piles of shit, and people don't enjoy them. It's lazy. Disney, used to be this monolith and this massive company who impacted so many people, and they've just decided to go against everything that made Disney Disney and go down the other path. I mean, there is a very famous misattributed quote to Disney, a Disney executive who said, "We are not in it to make art, we are in it to make profit." And I feel like people forget that Disney is a company. They are a business. They're in it to make money, but they're doing it in a very uninformed and I find lazy way. And that quote was actually from a Paramount executive. It wasn't even from Disney, and it was in a letter. And people have applied this to Disney because of how they've been treating their films and because of how they've been treating their audience recently. I mean, just go to a Disney park. I can't go to a Disney park now. I don't find them serious enough, and I find the people who go there either insufferable or the prices of everything are horrendous. It's not an enjoyable experience to go to the Disney parks anymore. It's no longer a magical place because they've made it such a corporate landscape. And I get that's just the way that these companies function, but film media, stuff that we watch, it impacts us on our day-to-day. We use that to teach children's stories. We use it to relate that to life experiences. They make us cry, they make us laugh, they make us feel feelings that we struggle otherwise. It's such an important medium for us to work with in film, and yet we're just not seeing it respected in a sense. Disney is no longer respecting what it's making. It's using it only as a cash grab, and that obviously isn't working. Look at the reception for these films. People hate them. They find them disgusting. They are horrendous, quick profit grabs for them to get stuff, and people don't like Disney anymore. They don't like Disney. That's not a not well-known fact. People hate Disney, and it's now pretty common for people to hate them, and that's fair enough. I hate Disney. I hate Disney for what they've done, for how they've treated their actors and how they've treated their artists and stylists and everyone who works for them. It's a shame, and the company isn't recognizing that, and they're deciding to go against that. And we can all see this within the live action adaptations. They are literally a microcosm of what is going wrong within the company itself. The art of adaptation is not to make something that can make you money, it's to tell a better story. And people struggle, and Disney struggles to realize that. when you adapt a medium or you adapt a piece of art, you should not be in it to try and make money. You should be in it to try and impact the audience and try and leave an everlasting impact on it. They originally adapted the books and fairy tales of these stories into their animated films. These adaptations aren't adaptations, they're copy paste and put RTX on. You know, that's not the same. That is lazy. There are so many companies which have done this better, and there are so many ways that you can do this better. But Disney just, it ignores that. It ignores its audience. It ignores its own consumers in hopes just to make all those big bucks and be an Oscar darling. And yet it fails every time, and they're still not learning. And I can't really pin the point of blame onto one particular executive, because it seems to have been this way for years now, and it's awful. Disney itself, when the company started, wasn't great, but at least they made art. They aren't making art now. I feel like I'm ripping off H-Bomber Guy here. I'm not. I feel like you would know just off the topic of adaptation that Tom Hooper inevitably was going to turn up in this discussion. There's no way he can't turn up, because he has done so many horrendous things for cinema, and you know, it's impossible not to talk about him within this space because everybody else has talked about him, and now it's my turn. Tom Hooper won an Oscar for creating Les Miserables. Les Miserables is not a good musical adaptation. That's not an opinion, that's just a fact. It's not good. Musicals are supposed to sound nice, like that's the draw of them. And I know that he was trying to go for a realistic and authentic theme, but again, back to Disney's attempt for being more realistic, it takes away from the overall image of the film and the musical itself. It's very specifically written so you can get it correct. And I know I'm not the only one who's talked about this. I would definitely recommend Sideways videos on both of Tom Hooper's films. They go into a lot of depth on the musical side of why these don't work. But even someone who's not well versed in music can tell that there are definite problems within both of these films. And loads of people have only started getting on this because of the release of Cats. But Tom has been doing this since Les Miserables. I mean, you can just see it. Not only that, within Les Miserables, the way that he pushed his actors and the dangerous situations that they were put in while filming weren't great either. And I feel like Tom Hooper, as a director, doesn't understand musicals, and therefore he should not be directing films of musicals, because that's just a complete tonal dissonance, and therefore, you know, you can't get that emotion that you're trying to produce and pass it on to the audience, because the entire time we're all just screaming, why did you make this? This sounds awful, or this looks awful. Not naming any names. Tom Hooper falls under every single problem that Disney does, as well as adding some more on top of that. The main issue that everybody have found with Tom Hooper was Cats, so let's talk about Cats. So my camera decided to die between the intro of this section and the next section, so the rest of it will be audio with little drawings over the top to keep you guys entertained. Sorry about that, hopefully I can get it fixed soon. So we need to get into the history of Cats and how Cats became this. If you don't already know, Cats was originally a set of poems written by T.S. Eliot, a poet and writer born in the late 1800s. He was known for works such as The Wasteland and Four Quarters. Most people wouldn't know that he has the beginning of this legacy of Cats as the musical and the poems. The poems are originally called Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, written in 1939. Very shortly after, Eliot was in fact approached by Disney for a possible film adaptation. However, Eliot turned it down because he didn't want it to look too pretty, and he really wanted to keep them authentic. Eliot was against nearly all proposed offers of adapting the poems while he was still alive. And now this brings us to Andrew Lloyd Webber. Webber is one of the most well-known people within the musical space. He is the creator of multiple cult classics such as Evita, Jesus Christ Superstar, Sunset Boulevard, and of course I can't name all of his musicals in this section or I would be here for hours, but if you know musicals, you know Webber. Known for outlandish and extravagant plays and is one of the granddads of musical theatre in the modern age. Also, he was a massive cat person and was desperate to adapt the poems into a musical. He finally got the rights from T.S. Eliot's widow. I actually can't find a direct date of when these rights were signed off. I can't seem to find any sources with a direct date either. If any of you know, please leave it in the comments. I'm hazarding a guess to say the late 60s to early 70s, since production of the song started in 77 and continued into the late 70s. However, prior to Webber writing Cats, he was only really known for Evita and Jesus Christ Superstar. Both did well, but weren't breaking through any proverbial glass ceiling, in a sense. Cats, however, did, with a release in 1981 in London, with a focus on dance, outfits, songs, rather than plot. It was an immediate success. It was a spectacle, and up until Phantom, it was the longest running musical in the West End, a complete global hit. People could not get enough of it. There was merch, fan meetups, and people would regularly go to see it multiple times. In total, Cats ran in London for 21 years, with a grand total of 8,949 performances, and for 18 years in New York, with a total of 7,485 performances. Nothing to snort at. It was extremely impressive when it was released. And it even got translated into multiple languages to perform to a wider audience. And a directed video of the stage show was released in 1998. The songs are also nearly directly taken from the original poems with very little editing, so the lack of plot makes sense in a way since it is the conglomeration of Eliot's multiple poems linked together, with the only main link being cats themselves. The standouts for the songs which weren't directly taken from the poems were Introduction to the Jellicle Cats and Memory, which Webber had actually written years prior and had to make alterations of during the process because he had an issue with another writer on the song. I fixed my camera, so that's a win. Also, I've just figured out that through the course of filming this video, I have done so many outfit changes that you guys have probably seen half my wardrobe by now. So that's fun. Anyway, we now get on to my favourite bit of this entire video. This is where I did the most research because I actually fell in love with this, and it is the first film adaptation which went into production of Cats the musical. So if you don't already know, which I would be surprised about because this is quite well known now, the original Cats film was supposed to be produced by Amblin Animation, the same studio which did E.T. and also The Rescuers, and was run by Spielberg in a sense, as in the process of making the Cats musical for this animated film was run by Spielberg. It was supposed to be set in post-war London. I absolutely adore the character designs. I have them on screen now. These are absolutely amazing. I am so sad that we didn't end up getting this. So this film properly went into pre-production in a sense. They had multiple character sheets, they had background design, and again, all of these are gorgeous and are done in beautiful watercolour as well, and really set the ambiance and tone. I think this is a great way to show the musical, because the musical itself is extravagant and, like I said before, a spectacle. It wasn't supposed to be taken seriously, so animation would have been a clear and obvious example to use this. In a similar way that the Renaissance did, animation is a great tool to tell a musical, because we don't believe it's real because it's animated. I genuinely believe that this production would have been amazing if it had not been for a creative dispute between Spielberg and Webber, at which point the entire film fell through, and then very shortly after, Amblin Animation Studios went into bankruptcy after multiple flops from films and other issues within the company itself. This is devastating to me. I genuinely wish we could have seen this film. I can't believe that we didn't end up getting it. And if any of you guys are creative and stuff, please see these character sheets, try and make some cool animations. I would have loved to see this. I think this would have been amazing and like one of the classical animated films that people would have talked about for decades. And it's really disappointing that we didn't get it. Again, this film could have done so much, and I think this is what we should have had, but instead we now have this. This entire situation between the animated film and the live action film genuinely annoys me. Just comparing the two only on a visual level, it's irritating. Like, look at the designs that we have in the original 2D animated idea for the film. Grisabella's design, for example, is dripping with character and dripping with, actual, you can see where she's come from, you can tell that she's haggard and she's gone through a lot. It's amazing. And then look at her in the film that came out. Right? And again, look at old Deuteronomy's design, you've got all these massive like coats and fur and really bigging up like to sound and look like old Deuteronomy to show that it's a powerful and I say powerful, but like the leader of the cats, so it looks king-like or royalty-wise to reflect that, right? And in the live-action adaptation, you have Judi Dench with a bit of fur. And then you have every other background cat which had these great and emotive body movements and gestures suggested by the old character sheets from this 2D animated film, and then we have this. It's not. You see why this is annoying to me, right? I feel like I know everybody else is really annoyed about this as well, but the fact that I can directly see what it could have been and then what we got, it's so infuriating. And also the directors. Can you imagine a Cats film directed by Spielberg? Can you? I can't. I wish I could. We could have had it, but we didn't. So, I don't know what was going on there. Instead, we got Tom Hooper. Tom Hooper. It's just every single thing about the creative decision of making the live action film seems to have been made at 3 a.m. when Tom Hooper was so exhausted and like stressing about trying to make this as realistic as possible. So he was like, oh, I know, we'll just have them have fully human bodies but crawl around on all fours like they're on acid. Why? Why? Genuinely, why? Like, at no point when watching the live action film did I go, yeah, that looks cool. Oh, yeah, no, that character design makes sense, because they don't. Compared the designs from the 2019 film to the costumes and makeup from the stage show. What's going on? It's almost like Tom Hooper never even watched the stage show. He didn't understand that these cats are designed to have these big, outlandish, outspoken outfits and big, like their hair's massive. They've got this amazing makeup, all these details. They wear coats and jackets. They have one of the best outfit changes ever in the stage show, right? And then when we see it in the film, it looks like she's peeling her skin off. And it's really uncomfortable to watch because you don't realize that she's in a suit. And you technically don't realize when you're watching the stage show, but it makes sense because she's wearing this massive, bulky coat, which comes off into this amazing shimmery dress with all these tassels, and it looks awesome, right? And then in the film, we have her peeling off her own skin, which has this awful purple pink inside to actually make it look like it was her skin, and then a really boring pink purple suit. It's so bad. All of the character designs in this film are bad. If you are choosing to make a film about cats and you chose the most basic, plain character designs from Cats, you must be insane. Like, this is genuinely infuriating to me. And I get that I'm really late on the game on this, but I've been watching and I've been listening and I've been looking at what's going on with everyone in the space of like movie critic and everything. Nobody likes this film, and everybody has their own situations of why they don't like this film. But just purely on a visual level, everybody talks about it, how visually it looks awful. But it's not even just like, oh, the CGI is bad. The goddamn designs are bad. Every aspect of the designs in the live action film are awful. I do not like a single one. And usually I'm able to find one, maybe two that I like. I got really, really excited for Skimbleshanks. I love that song. It's a great song. And again, I think they did it really well in the live action film. However, his design is really boring. It's not that fun. Like, he's wearing a train controller outfit. And like, they didn't really do that much more. And yeah, he's got like a cool mustache. But that's it. Like, what? Come can't. Like, there's so much more you can do with that. You can make him have a load of funny little quips. Like the original, I'm pretty sure he had like a monocle. Like if you watch it in the director video, he wears a monocle in his song, and that's just some really nice detail. And they just don't have that detail within the film at all. The sets are cool-ish, but they feel very out of this world. And because the cat's designs in the live action film are so human, it looks and just feels unnatural to be in a world which is so big. But it's not like big enough that they can't do anything, right? They're not like ant size, and they're not even like average house cat size in relation to these things. It's like, what, maybe a third bigger than their own designs? Like, what? It just looks so bad. Like, every aspect of the live action film looks so bad. And again, this is what we could have had. Like, this is what we have on stage. Not even like this is what we could have had. This is what we have on stage. And this is what we got in cinemas. Why? Why? Like, at least Les Miserables was good to look at. You know, at least it correctly reflected the area, the time, the characters. You could see that in their designs. Valjean's design, great. Bang on. Love it. I love the detail to it. But to be honest with you, it's not that hard to mess up because it's French Revolutionary era, right? Like, if you mess that up, you've never looked at a history book. But now this is genuinely making me assume that when Tom Hooper decides to direct a film, specifically a musical, he won't watch the musical. He'll read the music, right? And he'll get the overall idea and then make all of his own decisions and not watch the actual musical itself and not watch the actual production and then go, yeah, that's a great idea. And it's not. Tom Hooper, please, please, for everybody else's sake, just stop and take a deep breath and listen to people. I'm begging you. So, what has been the point of all of this? What is the point of me doing what every other channel has done, rant and rave about the obviously horrendous films within this space, and just reiterate points that people have already said? I mainly have made this video to make a point towards what we should be doing within the film industry, and what I feel like companies and businesses should be aiming to do within creating films, TV, video games, books, art, comics, anything creative. What we should be striving to achieve when we're talking about creativity, when we're talking about adaptation. And again, I could have probably missed out the entire first half of this video where like I said, go over points that people have already said, but that would take away, I feel like, from the comparison of this to good adaptive media. And for example, one of my favourite ones, I previously mentioned Arcane. Obviously, it is amazing, adapting it from a pretty bog standard video game. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really know anyone who genuinely enjoys League of Legends, but that might be just because I live in a quite odd area where not a lot of people play it. But overall, I don't think a lot of people like League of Legends. But the TV series has made me cry multiple times. And the art is gorgeous, and the voice acting is amazing. This is what we should be aiming to do. This is what we should be aiming to create. And another great example, I personally think, is Good Omens, specifically Good Omens Season 1. This particular TV series, I think, is one of the best adaptations of a book. And unlike Arcane and unlike other adaptations, it keeps very, very close to the source material. I've read the book and I've watched both series of the TV show Good Omens. And again, I think I'm biased for my love of Good Omens because I love Michael Sheen and I love David Tennant, and Staged got me through lockdown. So I'm a bit biased, but I have the book here, and I actually got my physical copy of the book after I watched the TV series, where, as you can see, it now has the entire thing from the TV series on the front. Look at them, they're amazing. I love this book. But there are whole sections in this book which are directly, word for word, said within the TV show, and that's great. And that just means that they've adapted this book pretty much directly, word for word, into a TV show. And that is good adaptation, in my opinion, because this is a good book. And that's why it works. You've got great source material to tell a great story from, and if you don't change much of the great source material, you're probably still going to end up with a great story. But what happens in cases where their source material isn't so great? Well, then you can have stuff like Arcane. Again, source material not great, TV show stunning and amazing, and I cannot wait for season 2. Oh my god, I cannot wait for season 2. And what I find very interesting with adaptation is how the original creators approach it. Very famously, Stephen King hates the film adaptation of The Shining. Really famous. Loads of people talk about it. He hates the film version of The Shining, which, you know, fair enough. If you don't want your story told in a different way, you know, you can be kind of protective over it. But I think the film is great. And I don't think the book is bad. I think both of them are great. They tell the story very well. The directing and cinematography in the film of The Shining, I think, is gorgeous and stunning, and the acting is amazing. And the book is thrilling and keeps you on the edge of your seat. You know, it's both of them are good, but the creator doesn't like the film. And that doesn't mean the film's bad. That just means he doesn't like the film, which is fine, which is valid. We can go over that. Or, for example, you can make a mediocre film from pretty crap source material. I read Ready Player One when I was about 13, and I thought it was really weird. I mean, I liked it. The concept was very interesting. I liked the world building. But overall, I find the book quite confusing and an odd read. And you know, it doesn't take away from the book. I still have my copy down there. I read it from time to time, but I prefer the film. And I know the film isn't well liked because of how many times it just references other source materials and, funnily enough, The Shining. But I like the film. I think it immerses us better into the story than the book did because we can visually see what's going on. It doesn't mean it's a great film. I just think it's better. It's a better adaptation. And that's the beauty of when, you know, adapting material. The original creator's work is loved and understood, and someone has loved it enough to try and change it into something new, where the new creator, the new film director, new writer, new artist wants to produce something with their own shine on it, with their own opinion on it, with their own pizzazz on it. And I find that so intriguing. It's such a human attitude to reading a good or mediocre or shit piece of art and then going, hey, I want to tell my own story with this. This is how we've got fandom spaces. I'm in a lot of fandoms. I love fandoms. Fan art is some of my favourite art ever. Honest to God, and not the weird shit like normal fan art. Genuinely, some of these pieces of art are so good. In fact, the majority of them are. And I know that loads of people shit on sites like AO3 and Wattpad, but again, that is someone reading source material and adapting it and making something different. Again, I don't like 50 Shades, but it is an adaptive piece of media, and it's one of the weirdest ones because it's fan work produced into a book, then produced into a three-part film series. And people liked it. It obviously works, it appeals to an audience. Adaptive media is so important in our society because we can tell the same story multiple ways. And in literally every sense, every piece of art we create is in a form adaptive media. We are taking something and changing it into something else, but we still come from a source. I don't know anyone who's been able to create something just on the spot and with no reference to anything else. No one can do it. I draw, I paint, and I have had to learn how to draw and paint by researching and referencing and studying other artists, and that has helped me improve my art in the same way that this still being my first YouTube video, I have done a lot of research into other video essays and other video essayists in this space to try and make my art appealing to your audience, but also for me to tell my own story and for me to tell my own opinion on these things. Adaptation is so important to our society that when it's done for greedy and senseless reasons, it makes me angry and it makes me frustrated. At no point should we be looking at a piece of art and going, oh, I want to do this just to line my pockets. Because that takes away from the human experience, that takes away from the human side of adapting a piece of art, of adapting a medium. And it frustrates me. I mean, genuinely, it frustrates me so much. And you know, there are so many things where you can just incorporate them and make them something new and something interesting through adaptation and not do the same shit. Like, again, technically, this is on the same level as the live action Disney adaptations. It's pretty much word for word the source material, and they've lifted it straight off the book, but they've done it in a fun and an exciting way. And this was the first screen adaptation of Good Omens, which means it's the new one, which means it's interesting. But Disney already did a screen adaptation of their films, of Cinderella, of Aladdin, of Sleeping Beauty, all of those. Have they done a live action Sleeping? Yeah, they did, Maleficent. When Disney has been changing this, they want to meet with the new standard of people being very intelligent when it comes to film and TV, and criticisms which were very trendy about 15 years ago are somehow still being incorporated with these live action adaptations. And sometimes it's funny that they're a bit self-aware, and other times it's stupid and it's relying on references from other films that if you haven't seen the original films you wouldn't get and you wouldn't understand. And I think that's lazy. It's lazy writing. Write something for everyone. Make something for everyone. You know, if you want to show your art off, if you want to show your creativeness to the world, show it to everyone, not just to an already existing audience who already likes that medium. I mean, for again, in fan spaces, that's what we do, but it also allows other people to see it and go, oh my God, that's cool as shit. What's going on? And then it brings them into a whole new world. A really famous example of a bad adaptive series would be the Hobbit films, adapted from the singular Hobbit book. The book itself of The Hobbit is not that long. I mean, it's long, but it's not long enough to have a 3-part film series adapted from it. And that's a very well-known criticism. The films feel like they drag out, and they wanted to have the same effect as the Lord of the Rings films did. And it falls into the same branch as, you know, Tom Hooper and Disney. They're doing it for profit, they're doing it for money, and it doesn't achieve anything. It genuinely doesn't. If you made one really good film to match the one really good book, that would make sense, and you could change it and you could make it new and make it interesting and exciting. You shouldn't just be doing it because, oh, we already have a fan base and we should get more money from them. That's not the point of it. It's not the point of anything. I understand it to an extent if you want to keep your business going, but if you're creating art, create art, you know? Don't create shit. It's pretty basic. Anyway, this video has been long enough. I'd like to thank all of you for watching very much. This has taken me way too long to create. I've chosen the worst time of year to be filming a video in my life. I've got a lot of other shit going on. But thank you very much for watching if you're still here at the end. I'm planning to do another video soon on a completely different topic. So, yay. And thank you very much again for watching, everyone. Bye.